I didn't receive any apologies, but I'm going to take a note of Councillor Logue.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No?
I didn't receive any declarations of interest, Chair.
And the recess powers? So we have we've got Chief Inspector Callum Smith, who is going to give us a report from the police. Thank you. Over to you, Callum.
Thanks very much, Chair. Morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. And I suppose by way of an introduction, I'll just start off by introducing myself. I'm Callum Smith. I've just, in the last 3 weeks, I've actually been on leave for the past two weeks before now, so just trying to get my head back into things today. But the 3 weeks before that, I was just on. I've just started in the role of the North Highland Area Commander role for Police Scotland. So it's my sincere pleasure and privilege to be here. I was previously spent 9 years working in the Ross area between, I think it was up to 2015 or thereabouts, 2016, 17. So I'm familiar with the area. I've worked in Dingwall and Ness beforehand, and I'm originally from Stornoway, so I'm familiar with the area, and I'm very happy to be here. So this is obviously the first committee meeting I've been to with yourselves, so I'll run through things, Chair, as I would kind of anticipate that you would hope that I would do. So if I do anything in a manner that you would wish me to do differently, please tell me, and I will do that. My hope was to kind of run through the report initially, just with given the headlines and the highlights of what I can see myself in there, and then maybe take questions towards the end, if that was okay. So I anticipate you've all got the report in front of you and there. So the time period, that the reporting time period that's on there is obviously 1st of April 2023 until March 2024. So it's a good period in terms of it's a full accounting year as such. It is somewhat dated now in terms of statistics. We're obviously 6 months on from the most recent statistics on there, but I can give it a bit of context as to where we're at the moment currently as well. So the introduction that's on there, it kind of speaks for itself, so I'm not going to go through there. The data that I'm going to go through as well, that relates to it's the North Highland area. So policing wise, North Highland area would be Kessack Bridge and everything north of there up to Caithness effectively, and then west round to through to the west coast as well. So the introduction, the one key thing when we start talking about 3 year and in particular the 5 year average statistics that I'm going to come on to, is that COVID still plays a part in that. At some point we will probably move on from COVID, but at the moment when we're talking about the 5 year period, it's still part of that. The rest of the introduction, I think I'll speak through anyway when we come on to the statistics. So page number 3 there, it highlights the local policing priorities that we're all operating to. They obviously come from the feedback from the public, from consultation with yourselves and consultation with other strategic partners. I don't think that's current and correct. It's road safety and road crime is the first one that's on there. Antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder is the second one. Acquisitive crime is the third one. Protecting vulnerable people, serious organised crime, and terrorism and public order are the other three. So they pretty much encompass pretty much what we do every day, day in, day out anyway. And I think it also encompasses what certainly I see day to day as being the challenges and the needs that we need to try and provide for the public in terms of our day-to-day role. So moving into the statistics there, so page number 4 is the first one that relates to the priorities. So road safety and road crime is the first one that's on there. Each of these priorities, each of these reports, each of these priorities and each of the pages have got intention and objective. I'm not going to go through each of the intention and objective. They're there. they're fairly self-explanatory and fairly similar in all of them, where we're effectively looking to work with partners, the public, and finding different methods and ways of addressing the priorities. So that's what the intention and objectives are in each one of them. If any of these anyone wants to discuss in further detail, we'll do so. But looking into the statistics there for road safety and road crime, so the number of fatalities there straight away. So there's the first one's on there for North Highland. It's obviously a tragic picture that 7 people have still lost their lives in the year 2023-2024 on the roads of North Highland. However, more positively, that is a reduction of 6 down from the previous year, and is also the lowest year in the 3-year average and the 5-year average as well. So there is 7 people have tragically lost their lives. There's no coming away from that, but have stepped forward there. The difficulty with these statistics, the same with any statistics, the difficulty with statistics is that obviously where you can have one accident and you can have a number of fatalities in one accident, which can actually have an impact on these statistics either way. So, but either way, there's a kind of positive trend there where there's been a drop in fatalities. Interestingly, the next one, drink drive offences is again, this is where statistics can be read in whichever way you want, positively or negatively. There's a significant rise there of 110 offences over from the year 2022 to 2023 into 23-24, where there's been 110 more offences detected of drink driving. Again, that's up quite significantly on the 5-year and 3-year average. That's obviously can be taken negatively, whereby people are still drink driving and drug driving, but it can also be taken positively, whereby we're actually detecting these offences more. One thing I would kind of highlight there, which we are becoming, which I anticipate is featuring in those statistics, is until recently, the way we detected drug driving was through quite dated methods, if you want to put it like that, where we would come across somebody that was driving in a manner that was concerning. We would then go through examinations with them, part of which involved them walking in a straight line and things like that, and then we would go and try and get blood from them, bits and pieces like that. That's recently changed, where we now can, road policing officers can take a saliva sample at the roadside from anyone we suspect of drug driving. That's had a massive impact of late, and I would anticipate that some of those statistics come from that positive move forward. So there is a change there in terms of our ability to actually detect, and that's over the last couple of years. We've been rolling that out bit by bit, more and more, where more officers have the ability to undertake that test, where previously it was just road policing officers. So that's the drink driving statistics as they are. And then the speeding offences is also year on year up, and also on the 5 and 3 year average up significantly. So it's up there. 749 offences have been detected in the previous in the accounting year that we're looking at. And the year before that, it was 540. So it's up to 9, and again, something 5-year average. I think, and I anticipate with many of your constituents, that some of the kind of complaints that you will receive time will be around speeding and road traffic. So I would hope that would go some way to kind of give some confidence that there is certainly detections ongoing out there, and there's proactive work ongoing out there. I think the next graph that's down there on page number 4 is worthy of note in its own right. So this graph looks at the number of offences that I've just highlighted there, and then it looks at them in comparison with the Inverness Area Command and the South Highland Area Command. So the South Highland Policing Area Command is effectively south of Inverness, east of Inverness as well, and slightly west of Inverness. But the Inverness is just Inverness City. it shows a picture there where in the 2023-24 period, drink driving is higher in North Highland area than the Inverness area, and the South Highland area is 3 times as high as South Highland area in terms of detections. And in the 5-year average, again, it's higher, but it's of note in terms of the work that we're doing. I would suggest that there is some merit in looking at the fact that we've got road police officers who are based in around the Dingwall area. That's their main base. Does that in some way feature into them being as visible in the North Highland area as it might be anywhere else? I would suggest it does. That's not to suggest that other areas aren't getting a service, but certainly I would suggest a benefit to actually having officers based in Dingwall, road policing officers. So that's page 3. I don't know if Councillor Bird, if you want to.
We can't hear you, Chris.
So I know I'm just undoing it. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was happy to wait till you finished, but as you have asked me to speak, your statistics all relate to your North Highland area. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Of which our ward is obviously a part.
Yes.
In police terms, what's your definition of the North Highland area?
So in simple terms, it goes everything north of the Keswick Bridge, effectively west round to taking in part of Lochalsh, all the way then effective best way then describing it is right the North Coast 500 from there on, effectively right the whole west coast up to Inverness, across to Wickethurso, and then back down to North Keswick, effectively.
So it's Ross and Cromarty, Sutherland and Caithness, essentially.
Essentially, and a part of Lochalsh, yeah, a smaller part of Lochalsh.
But not Skye or anything like that.
No Skye, no. That features in South Highland.
I'm just trying to work out, what proportion of your statistics might apply to our ward. That's all.
Yeah, it's a good point. The way the reports are now generated, the system doesn't allow us to break it into wards. It breaks it into the. So you can have a look on the Police Scotland website. It breaks it into Highland area. We can then break it down into divisional areas, but we don't have the ability to then break it into north and into the ward areas. So yeah, that's unfortunately the answer I've got to that.
You said a small part of Lochalsh. Does that mean just Kyle, but not Dorney? Or?
So not Dorney. So effectively, Kyle as well is covered by the South Highland area. Effectively, Lochalsh area. So Lochcarron, I suppose Lochcarron must be Russia. So up to Kyle, effectively, but Kyle and south of Kyle is in the South Highland area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's page number 3. That's the road safety and road crime part. So page number 5, page number 4 was the road policing part. Page number 5 is looks at the antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence, which includes alcohol and drug misuse. So again, the intention and objective are on there for everyone to read. So it's got the statistics there for murders. That relates to there's 2 murders in the 23-24 period, both of which have been detected and are working their way through the court system. One was in Inverness, and one was in Caithness. So it doesn't feature in terms of ward area that we're looking at today.
So there was one in Kyle. Will that be in the south area?
That's in the south area, and I'm trying to think back when was that. That probably was in the accounting period that we're looking at. But yeah, that'll be in the South Highland statistics. Yeah. That's also that's obviously also detected that one. That's actually working its way through. There's 2 people in custody for that one as well. So the assaults, looking at the assaults, again, there's a slight improvement there in terms of the number reported, down 17 on the year-on-year average, and then down on the 3-year and 5-year average. Serious assault is up 1 on the previous year, but down on the 5 and 3-year average. It's really much as such the same. So for example, for the accounting period, for the area we're looking at, there's 30 in the 5-year average, 28 in the 3-year average, 26 last year and 27 this year. So there's not much movement there. And then the drug possession is up 35 detections on the year-on-year, and it's slightly down the 5-year average, and about the same for the 3-year average. I think the key thing I would probably want to highlight there is the detection rates. The detection rates are high. Obviously, the murder detection rate we would always expect to be 100%. Anyway, it is 100%. The assault detection rate 73%, serious assault 85%, and drug possession 87%. That's nationally there would be high detection rates across the board. So I think that's probably the key thing to highlight there. There are certain areas that have more prevalence in terms of the violent crime, and some of that's linked in with licensed premises. So in the North Highland area, Dingwall, Oness, and Gordon, up to Caithness, those were the areas we're more concerned about in terms of that kind of violent crime figures. But in general, I would kind of suggest that the detection rates are good there, and that's a kind of positive performance. Underneath that, there's a bit there about the role that the harm prevention officer undertakes. I'll let you read that at your own leisure. But in essence, the harm prevention officer is an officer that is funded through the NHS, is based in headquarters in Inverness, and provides a service right across the whole Highland and Islands area. And their role is effectively to intervene wherever possible with vulnerable persons who are at risk of exploitation or violent abuse, or any kind of abuse for that matter, and in particular looking at the alcohol and drug addictions. So that's some of the prevention work that's undertaken there. There's mentioned there No Knives, Better Lives as well, which is a national programme which effectively looks at education around about the carrying of knives in general. I mean, again, in terms of carrying knives, it's not something that we're fortunate, in particular in the North Highland area, we're not fortunate that's not something that is massively prevalent. It is a feature of what we come across, but it's not something that we are coming across every single day by any stretch of imagination. So that's performance around about antisocial behaviour, drug disorder, violence. If I take you on to page number 6, then, which looks at acquisitive crime, this is probably more telling in terms of kind of highlighting a picture of where we're at the moment, and in terms of some of the societal trends that we're finding that are featuring into our policing. And if I take you through it, it'll kind of probably tell its own story here. So the intention there and the objective are again there for everyone to read. One of the things we've noticed over the last number of months, maybe year now, is and I'll come on to it, theft by shoplifting, is talking obviously about people feeling the effects of societal changes and financial changes and so on and so forth. And we've noticed, Inverness is another example of it, but North Highland here is a good example of it as well. We've noticed theft by shoplifting, for example, have gone up quite significantly. So if I take you on to theft by shoplifting, I'll come back to housebreaking and fraud in a minute, but if I take you into theft by shoplifting and the theft of motor vehicles there, which are the second, third and fourth items on that table there, page number 6, there's a significant increase, in particular in the theft by shoplifting. It's up on the year-on-year average, and it's year-on-year statistics, and it's up on the 5 and 3 year average as well. The theft of motor vehicles, it's not something that we're seeing prevalently, but it is up again. The shoplifting one is probably more telling in terms of actually what's happening in society and how certain some of the things we're seeing being stolen this isn't high value goods such as televisions. It can be at times, but we're seeing items such as food items being stolen. We're seeing items like steaks and things like that being stolen from Tesco's and bits and pieces like that. So they are, that kind of highlights kind of some of what's happening in society and how it's fitting into policing. Again, the detection rates there are high, 74 and 75%. For those theft of shoplifting and theft of motor vehicle are both high when taken into consideration against national trends. And then if I go back to number 1, number 2 on the housebreaking and fraud, I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat it at the outset. When you look at the detection rates, they need to be improved. That's the bottom line. So housebreaking is a detection rate of 25. Fraud is a detection rate of 20%. In mitigation of the fraud detection rate, I can give the context of frauds as we experience them now is they are international. So we're finding, so our victims will very often, they're international, they're happening online, they're happening across the phone. They are rarely, if very, very rarely now happening in person, for example. So if we look at, for example, the frauds for the year 23-24, there's 177 of those. A massive proportion of that will be online. The issue that we're having then is that actually the detection rate there is so low because actually one of the issues we're actually starting to face then right at the outset is that some of these and a number of these will be traced to foreign countries. The locus of the crime, where the crime has been committed, will be abroad. That quite obviously has its difficulties. So that kind of features somewhat into the low detection rate for the frauds. The housebreakings, that's something I'm going to look at myself just coming into this role this year straight away to look at the detection rate for this year and going forward because it's far too low. It needs to be improved. One of the things I would just highlight to give some context to the housebreaking figure is that what we find at times is we'll get a trend of say 10. So somebody will come travelling, criminals will travel from an area out with the Highlands into the Highlands, commits in the region of 8, 9, 10 housebreakings overnight. And by the time they're all reported, the suspects will be on their way, and then we're playing catch up from there. That does feature into those 40 odd housebreakings. It doesn't necessarily then make an allowance for the detection rate being where it is, but that would be the dishonesties, the acquisitive crime, and as I say, it kind of some of it features into the societal trends as we find them. The banking protocol there that's on there, the parcel scam fraud and the rural watch, which there's a bit of commentary about all three down below there. They all feature in some of the prevention and intervention work that we try and do to try and raise some of the agenda that we're trying to kind of push, that people need to be aware online and when they're picking up phone. Unfortunately, it's often elderly people who are victim of some of these frauds. We also do work with the Adult Protection Committee and people like that as well to try and kind of do a multi-agency bit of work around about that. I'll leave that and I'll just carry on and then I'll to page number 7 there. So the next one is protecting vulnerable people. The intention and objective again are on there. So the first one there I mentioned there is the rape figures. So it's slightly up on so 48 rapes were reported in North Highland area for 2022-23 is slightly up to this past year 23-24. In reality, it's much in, so the 5-year average is 48.2 and the 3-year average is 49.7. So there's not much change there. The detection rate is low there. That's 28%. There's an absolute and definite context to that, in that it's sometimes you can't hide the reality that much of the public sector has suffered some difficulties around about resilience, staffing, such like. So this period that we're looking at was the rape investigation team that we have for that covers the North Highland area, that covers the whole of N Division, covers the whole of the Highland area. They had, over the course of the county year we're looking at, they had their staffing was much lower than it should have been. That's now been addressed, and that detection rate is a direct result of the amount of staff that they had, relevant to the amount of staff that they should have had. As I say, that's been addressed, so these detection rates will now come back up. It's important to say that when we look at the detection rate for rapes of 28%, that's not to say that the rapes that were reported in that period won't be detected. They will be detected. We run generally about 50 to 60% detection rates for rapes, which is in keeping, if not slightly above, the national average. That will, once it resolves itself, will come back up to that level. It's just the detections won't come through in the accounting period that we're looking at. They'll come through this year, for example. So what you could very well see is that this year has a higher detection rate than would be expected. But that's the context around that detection rate there. Domestic crime, we've actually got a drop, an 84 instant drop of domestic crime reported. Again, it's down in the 5-year and 3-year average. I find that surprising because it's something that's that we deal with. That is what we deal with day in, day out. But the detection rate again is high. So 61% is high again in comparison to national average. National average is around about 50 to 55%. The work that we do with domestic victims it's not touched on. The statistics don't show that, but the work that we do with domestic victims is massive, and that flows into child protection as well. It flows into adult protection as well at times. So the detection rate is one part of that. Another part of that is the work that we do with them, with victims of domestic crime, to ensure that they can try and turn their lives around and remove themselves and be supported to get away from the abuse they're suffering. Hate crime is up. So again, it's a gradual increase there. If we look at the 5-year average, there's 98 instances reported, and then a 5-year average, 101, and a 3-year average. 2022-23 is 105, and 23-24 is 120. That's up 15 on the previous year. It's probably just worthy of note, just to remember that in the context of the Hate Crime Act coming into becoming live, that only came live the 1st of April this year. So the accounting period that we're looking at doesn't include the new hate crime legislation. So I'm just making that mention of that in terms of, I'm just aware that it was such a high-profile event when the legislation became live. But it is in keeping with the fact that we are, and I would anticipate again this coming year with the hate crime legislation having come into place, that number would go up again, as it captures more protected characteristics in the hate crime legislation that now exists than there was in the previous years. Missing persons. So this is a slight anomaly here. So the missing persons numbers that you see there, that relates to Highlands and Island numbers as a whole. It's just the way our systems are able to pull the data. So we've got 277 instances of missing persons that we dealt with across the Highlands and Islands as a whole across 2022-23, and then that's down 107 to 170 in the 23-24 period. That can be for a number of reasons, if I'm being honest, but I'd like to highlight, probably as part of that, the missing persons commentary that's down below there, where there's been a lot of work. For example, if you looked after children there in the data below there, in 2022-23 we had 131 instances of looked after children going missing. That's down to 41 in the year 23-24. That's a massive decrease. And I'd like to highlight that I believe that some of that is down to the work that we do with the children's homes and the children themselves. We've taken in protocols of during the period that the Philomena protocol is called, where children and young people who go missing, who are in care and who are regularly going missing. We've done work with the children's houses to try and develop a better working relationship whereby the children are reported missing at appropriate times rather than the minute that they're out of sight, if you want to put it like that. And also we've developed, as part of that protocol, we've developed our understanding of where these children are going more. We've developed more of an understanding about what groups they're surrounded by and so on and so forth, which has allowed us to try and kind of work proactively at some of the children who go missing. So that's a kind of positive trend, but as ever, that can be affected by a number of different factors, and that could be the case for this coming year as well. And then finally, the last couple of pages are on there. So serious and organised crime is on there. It just highlights the amount of drug supply and cases that we've had. So we've got the year to date is up 18 against the previous year, and it's actually the highest it's been in the 5-year and 3-year average. 31 for the 5-year average and 26 for the 3-year average. It would be too simple to say as a whole that is down to county lines, but it would be remiss not to highlight that county lines is part of the society that we operate in now, and particularly in the not so much Caithness and Sutherland, but particularly in the Easter Ross and Wester Ross areas, we're seeing the kind of small levels of lower levels of county lines reaching there from coming out of Inverness. But that is definitely part of it's more in the Easter Ross area, I would say, but certainly Wester Ross as well. It's been a feature of that in its own right. Is the concern there is that starts to then have an effect on young persons as well as vulnerable adults who are, as a result of alcohol and substance misuse, who have become vulnerable in their own right. So that's something we're keeping a very sharp focus on, and we've been doing a lot of work around about that. A lot of successful work. I think that actually the 39 figure highlights a successful work. But the nature of county lines is that it moves very quick. So they could be in one house, for example, in Muir today. Tomorrow they could be in a house in Dingwall. It actually even it starts to strike at our ability to actually how we operate, for example, in terms of how we get warrants. For example, our ability to get warrants isn't immediate, and they move sometimes quicker than we can get warrants. So we are actually having to adapt our tactics to try and actually be as swift as we possibly can be in the context of how they operate. So, but we had a lot of successes with that, but we just need to keep working on that. But that's the main trend of serious and organised crime that we deal with in the North Highland area. And then finally, page number 9 talks about counter-terrorism there. I probably don't tend to say much about counter-terrorism other than to just highlight so that we work under the contest strategy, which is the national strategy for dealing with counter-terrorism. The prevent strand of the contest strategy is where we work with partners, statutory partners, and any other relevant partners to try and identify and prevent, I suppose, people who may be at risk of radicalisation or of becoming involved in extremism. And that goes across. It's touched on there, where there's work that's done through education. If we come across children who are a result of, or who are potentially victim of any of that, we'll go through child protection procedures as well with social work and bits and pieces like that. So that's some of the work that's undertaken around about counter-terrorism, but there's nothing more that I really intend to highlight around about that at the moment. And then very finally, the last 3 pages there, 10, 11, 12, are they are the statistics for the 5 years, the last 5 years, for all crimes across the North Highland Area Command. It's evident there that from 2018 right through to 2023-24, the total crimes reported and offences reported has gone up year on year. And yeah, some. I think it's probably just worthy of note, just highlighting group number 8 there. So page number 12. When I think just going back to what I said at the beginning about road traffic offences, we're very acutely aware. I am acutely aware of the impact that road traffic offences have on all of us, from fatalities at the worst end to speeding in urban areas in 30 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour areas. But it's just worthy of noting that probably some of the highest figures that we have for any kind of crimes, detected crimes, reported crimes, and detected crimes is around about road traffic. So there is a definite effort there to respond to that. But I appreciate how well that feels to some constituents. Sometimes might not be that great. But so that's the kind of report. Sorry for rambling on a wee bit, but hopefully that gives a bit of flavour. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I was wondering, would the figures you've got for shoplifting in shops reflect on the economic climate and the need for food banks now more than it used to be?
So certainly what we're seeing is, I suppose the best way I can comment on that is what we are seeing people stealing things, food items, as you touch on, Councillor, that we previously wouldn't have been seeing so regularly. I mean, I don't know if, for example, I don't know the answer to the question. If there was if there was plentiful food banks on every street corner, would that then mean that the shopliftings would resolve themselves, or the shopliftings that we've seen? You'd like to think so. Certainly the shopliftings for food items, you would like to think so. But unfortunately, there's an element as well that some of the people that we interact with and detect who are shoplifting, whether it be food items or any other items, that it's not been simply the last couple of years that that behaviour has been in place, that they have been conducting those behaviours prior to the most recent credit crunch, for example. But certainly there has been an uprise in shopliftings of food items here. And
the children that go missing from homes that are looked after, where do they go?
So so some of them, this is going to sound a strange way of putting it, but some of them on a more positive side of things may just be wandering the streets and out socialising with their friends. That sounds a strange thing to say positively, but the reason I say that is because on a more negative note, some of those who actually are missing will are becoming victims of exploitation. For example, with county lines and other aspects that I was talking about there. And that's where we really become concerned, and that's why we do so much work proactively around about the missing children, because what we find is some of the most vulnerable missing children then tend to get drawn towards county lines and then tend to get drawn into criminality from there, and it becomes a very vicious circle. It's very difficult to get out of. In areas, not so much, I don't have any recent examples in the North Highland area, but for example in Inverness, we're finding 15-year-olds, for example, who have been taken to Inverness from areas of Central Belt Scotland, London, Birmingham, places like that, and they are on the streets of Inverness selling drugs, and then they're under 16. So that's what we are trying to fight against with our own young children, to make sure that they don't become victim of that. And that's why on the one hand we try and target county lines, on the other hand we're trying to be proactive around about working with the social work and children's and homes about trying to stop it happening at source, I suppose. So yeah,
it's good that you're working with social work, that the officers on the streets from social work, you work a bond with them. That's good. Thank you. Liz?
Thanks.
Oh, I think it's Chris next, Biz. Or do you want me
Sorry, I didn't notice. Sorry.
I'll come in after Chris. Thanks.
That's all right. Liz?
That's okay. It's simply thinking of your figures on housebreaking and burglary. Is it possible to locate these more precisely to the towns and villages where they occur?
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly get more, because there's only still a lot, and it's 40 too many. But because the numbers are, I mean, I can give you, if there's more detail you're looking for that, I can get you more detail for that and pass it on to you in the next week or so. I'm interested, if I'm being honest, because I'm interested in it myself, both from last year, and I'm interested in it this year as well, because that detection rate should be higher, in simple terms.
Yes, if you could provide the hotspots in our ward, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, no, I'll do that. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah. Liz now.
Yeah, so thanks for that report. That's really quite fascinating reading, and there are a lot of positives in there. I just also want to say that I've had a couple of issues in the last year where I have had to approach your colleagues and get help with things, and I just wanted to acknowledge that it has been really good, and things were dealt with quickly, and I was given advice. So a couple of things. One is the driving and the speeding. The North Coast 500 every summer comes up, and we have all these, I don't know what they do, they race round it.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if do you have extra patrols on in the summer for that, or do you have to sort of deal with that extra almost? So that was one question. The other one was with the hate crime. It said on your paper that you had a national inspection. Is that available to read, or is that not been published yet?
So it's a good question you asked that, because I was presented this report, and my understanding is, so we had in 2023 we had an improvement plan around about hate crime, and in 2024 we were given an assurance update around about that improvement plan. So the actual, I need to actually find more detail about this myself, because I'm not aware of us having undergone a recent hate crime inspection. But I will, it's interesting you bring that up, because I was actually going to away to actually find out more detail of that myself, because I certainly haven't been part of any myself. And the previous role I was in before this role, I was Detective Chief Inspector for Public Protection for Highlands and Islands, and part of that role encompassed hate crime, and again I didn't have any input there. So, but yeah, Councillor, I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you all about that and update you on that.
Can I just throw in one last question?
Yeah, definitely.
It's the harm prevention officer. I think this is such a fantastic post. Funded by the NHS through the community planning partnerships. I just wanted, is this secure? Is this a secure funding, or are they having to go every year to the NHS and get funding? Because it is such an important post, I think.
Yeah. So it's undertaken through the Alcohol and Drug Partnership. So Highland Alcohol and Drug Partnership is where the source of the work that then the harm prevention work officer comes from. So in essence, yes, but because of the method that actually is used to ensure that work continues, it's more secure than other annually funded posts, for example, because it's in everybody's interest to try and address this. I mean, if we were to look at the proportion of offences and incidents that we deal with that are related to alcohol and drugs, in my word, it's probably something like, I don't know, something 78%. I have no idea what the figures are exactly, but it would be high. So that's why that role is there. I don't anticipate that role will at all come under threat, and primarily because it comes from the work of the Adult and Drug Partnership, where the police, NHS, and other statutory partners are co-linked. So yeah, so I hope that'll be secure. In answer to your question about the road safety of the North Coast 500, so yes, it's a simple answer. So our road policing officers, again, who are based in Dingwall, they take taskings for hotspots, if you want to put it like that. Now, I mean, it's good on one hand, what I'm about to report, but not good on the other hand. They have been on the North Coast 500 and they have been getting significant speeds, particularly on the road, say to Achnalt, the straights there on the road between Garve and Achnasheen, and then the other area is kind of north of Ullapool. So between Ullapool and Lochinver, that kind of areas, and they've been coming about specifically off feedback from your own constituents in through yourselves, and then we target the areas that are directly fed in through yourselves. So I would strongly encourage, where you're coming, any people are coming to you with information these things, please email myself or so Richard Ross was the inspector for Dingwall. He's just moved on to another role. Actually, he's moved on to a role in chief inspector role in road policing, which is a good thing. So so he will be very much on our side. But but his replacement will be known towards the end of August, and I'll update you. But meantime, if you email me anything at all, I'm more than happy to take up anything. And I suppose maybe I should have mentioned that at the beginning. If there's anything at all that I can help out with at any point, I would be delighted to do so, and I'm sure in time we'll meet in person as well. But yeah, I'd be delighted to take forward anything that's causing concern and to address it. But yeah, North Coast 500 in short is an area that we look at very specifically for the reasons that I've just highlighted there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Inspector Callum Smith. You've done so well for your first report. It's amazing. If that's your first one, gee.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you.
No, thanks
I appreciate you coming in front of us today. So, and wish you well in your new post. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I'm just going to drop off now. I'm going to go to the Dingwall Seaforth Ward now. So I'll but if there's any, I think hopefully you've got my email. And if there's any, I'll get back to you about the hate crime question, which I'm asking myself as well, because I'm intrigued by that, because I'm not really sure where that. I'm wary that's not a copy and paste, that's not been removed from the last report. But anyway, I'll see what's going on there, and I'll get back to you. And the Housebreaking Council, I'll get back to you on that as well. Yeah, we'll look for an improvement in those detection rates in the coming year. So, thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Now we're on to our own roads officer, Ian McCready, for our winter service plan. Ian, are you there? He was. I saw him when we started the meeting. Ian?
He's showing us online, but I'll maybe send him a message as well.
Thank you. Good morning, Ian. We're just waiting on. I knew you were there early on. I saw you. Just waiting for this winter maintenance plan. The winter service plan. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. I'll just turn my volume up a wee bit. There we go. So, good morning, councillors. And once again, it's this time of year. We have the winter maintenance plan coming forward for approval. It's essentially the same routes, the same gritters, and the same staff as before. So I can go through in detail, or would you just like to move on to questions and answers?
What do the members think, Liz and Chris and Liz? You've got the report in front of you. I know you want Ian to go over it again, or do you want to ask questions on it?
I think it would be helpful to go over it personally.
Right, there you are.
Yeah, certainly. So, winter service is provided from a range of depots in the west. Silverbridge, Acklety Buoy, Ullapool, Gairloch, Applecross, Lochcarron, Ardelve and Glenelg. In addition, we've got an unmanned salt stances at Torridon and also at Dundonald. In terms of the routes that we treat primary routes first, then secondaries, and then others. Primary routes in West of Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh amount to 268 kilometres, and that accounts to 33%. Secondary routes, 222 kilometres, 28%. And other routes, slightly higher at 309 kilometres, which equates to 39%. We provide leaflets online and also physical copies showing these routes and the priorities for the public. Council employs a forecaster who provides a forecast at noon with updates at 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Duty officer, and there's a duty officer specifically for the west of Ross and Cromarty. The duty officer receives the weather forecast at noon and then makes the decision as to what, if any, evening pre-grits and what the following morning action will be. And throughout winter, we have a duty officer rota to ensure that out of hours, there's always going to be a duty officer on call. In terms of staff establishment, there's myself. The technical team in Ross and Cromarty consists of a senior technician, a structural technician who looks after bridges, and 2 roads inspectors. And within West of Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh, we have a roads officer, an assistant roads officer, an operational support officer, and then within our depots, we've got 3 operatives at Silverbridge, 2 at Acklety Buoy. We've got a foreman and 2 operatives at Ullapool, 5 operatives at Gairloch, a foreman and 2 operatives at Applecross, 3 operatives at Lochcarron, 3 operatives at Ardelve, and 2 operatives at Glenelg. Throughout the winter, we have a standby system so that we can ensure that there's sufficient drivers are available at the weekends. Imagine this is all based on forecasts, and forecasts with the best will in the world are only a forecast. So when we get the forecast at noon, we plan for that evening's action, but we also get updates. So we may put drivers on standby for the morning, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, when the morning update comes in, we can stand them down or we can pull them out. We've got 13 gritters in total and 5 footpath tractors. Operations begin at 6 o'clock in the morning and continue through to 9 p.m. And typically across West of Ross, Strathpeffer, Lochalsh, we use about 7,500 tons of salt each winter. Before winter starts, we ensure that sufficient stocks are across all our depots and salt stances. We also have grit bins on steep gradients. If we get requests for additional bins, these are assessed on the topographical elevation and the steepness of the road, whether we provide a regular gritting service, and how many people are using that road or footway. We also have to be aware of the resources available to refill those bins. We work closely with our partner agencies, the NHS, Education, Bayer, and the emergency services. Local contractors are also available for dealing with exceptional snow conditions. We do operate a winter resilience scheme for community self-help. We provide snow shovels, salt bins, salt or grit, and high-vis waistcoats. That really is a summary of our report, councillors, and I'd be happy to take any questions and answers.
I was wondering, Ian, what are the age of the snow ploughs, especially the one in Lochalsh, because we've lost our depot in Ardell.
Yeah, I can't off the top of my head tell you how old they are, but I'll find that out for you, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you. Because I don't want them to go away to have to go to Dingwall to get serviced, and I have no service in Lochalsh.
I understand that, Councillor Campbell. The nearest garage, I believe, is Dingwall. I think some of the minor
It's very
repairs.
concerning, and I said that at the time, but
No, I understand that.
It is. Thank you, Ian.
I think that it's perhaps easier to have centralised depots on the east of Ross and Cromarty, where the distances are shorter. But
Yeah.
over in the west, there's exceptional distances that can impact the services if we have to call out mechanics to attend a vehicle, or if we have to send a vehicle into the garage.
Thank you, Ian. Liz?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ian. This will be my third winter now as councillor. I learn every time. And I think personally what's really important and what's incumbent on us is actually getting that message out there, however we do that, to the local communities. So that's not a question, that's just something that I'm kind of noting. I wanted to ask about staffing, because I was aware somewhat in Wester Ross that there were some vacant posts. So I just wanted to know that we're okay for staffing over the winter.
Yeah, staffing is always an issue. We do have in some depots a higher turnover than others. Particularly concerning is that without sufficient drivers, we have to be very conscious of the amount of working hours and driving hours, especially during winter. We need every vacancy filled, and we're working towards that. However, all it takes is for a couple of guys to be off sick, and we can very quickly have a hole in our service. If that happens, we can draw on the east to assist, and ultimately we can draw on Inverness and Sutherland to assist. But that would be kind of exceptional events. But yes, staffing is critical.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you. Could I get I just had a message from Callum McPherson, who is doing our next Freeport update members. And if you've got any more questions for Ian, I would appreciate you making them short, as Callum's got several wards to cover and he's here now. so it'll make him late going to other wards if we delay him. Thank you. Is there any more for Ian? No. Well, I welcome Callum McPherson today.
Sorry,
Chair.
sorry to interrupt. Can you please approve the recommendations? Thanks.
What?
In the agenda. Can you please approve those ones?
Yeah, can we please approve the winter service plan?
Yeah, happy to approve.
Happy to approve, Ian. Thank you.
Could I just, on a different subject, just thank Ian for the substantial improvement in roads I've observed across substantial parts of our ward this summer, and well done to the whole team.
Thanks very much, Councillor Burt. I'll certainly pass that on to all my staff and the operatives. I know that we do get quite a bit of stick now and again in the press, and any support is much appreciated. Thank you.
And I also want to say how helpful Andy Bone is in our area. Is amazing. Thank you.
Just
Thanks,
locally, the road from Strathpeffer to Dingwall has been revolutionised.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, could I?
Okay.
It's the service plan has been approved, so could
Yeah.
I now welcome Callum McPherson for the Greenport update? Cromarty Firth Greenport update. Thank you, Callum. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, and I know you've got lots of business. So I'm doing a hopping around a few of the wards at the moment, but I'm all ears for as long as you need me for. So it was really just what I thought I'd do, rather than give you another set of presentations, which I'm sure you've had lots and lots of, which is let you know where we are in the process. But really importantly for me is to get some guidance from you as well, just about, you know, the way you're seeing things, any issues that you think should be addressed, and in particular, obviously, you've got your ear close to what's happening in communities as well. So I thought I would just start by just letting just for a few minutes saying where we are and going forward. I should also say that as somebody who's lived in Strathpeffer, Salachy and Achmore, I've definitely got an interest in what's happening in terms of the West benefiting in that way. So you know, I also think I understand some of the challenges that people may face or perceive to be there for what's happening in our Murray Firth and the Cromarty Firth Freeport. So so in terms of where we are, I was very grateful in early June, as you'll know, the full council and in June as well endorsed the Freeport submission. It was really important time-wise to get that in, because obviously we've had a general election since then, and as you know, general elections tend to slow things down. But I'm pleased to say that the UK and the Scottish governments have been working away on what we submitted to them, and we are hoping to get our feedback from that in the next few weeks. It's a process that's taken overall about 3 or 4 years, so a very long process. But because we've now got our tax site designation already under the belt, we're cracking on with trying to get jobs to the area, and also making sure that young folk in the area and the workforce development work starts. So I was going to also just let you know that our board's been updated recently, and long overdue, but I'm pleased to say we've got our female member on our board now, which is Vicky Nairn, who she was our, we already had some representation from the University of the Highlands and Islands, but Vicky's now on as the representative. And we've also got a change as well, because one of Bob Buskey, who was previously at Port Cromarty Firth, has retired, and we have his replacement, Alex, is on the board now. And we'll soon be going to get a representative who's not connected to the ports or to the council or to the UHI, somebody, you know, maybe from the community. So we've got a bit more depth to the board there as well. I should say, so in terms of the two main areas I wanted to just touch on, one was about workforce development and supply chain development. We've had a number of events that we've been trying to make sure that the local supply chain are aware of what's happening. And a few weeks ago, I went over to Kishorn, for example, spent some time with Ali Ferguson and the guys there to understand, even though they're not, if you like, in the Freeport area, we absolutely want the whole of the Highlands Islands to benefit here, which is why we're spending a lot of time with businesses and people from around the area. So we have also had a number of events where we've had school kids involved in realising what the opportunities are in the apprenticeships and the traineeships. And again, that's been open to children across the Highlands. So we had, this is back in the spring now, but we had about 600 S4s from across the Highlands who came to sort of accommodation, an employment fair to understand what's happening. There's more of that going to be happening across the area so that young folks realise the opportunities there are, especially as, you know, we start to see the amount of apprenticeships that are available start to increase. One thing I would say is that, so that's one thing in the workforce area. The second is around and people coming to employ in the area. We've already seen a number of companies coming in, particularly into Easter Ross and into the Inverness area, who previously their HQ was over in Aberdeen, or that's kind of where they've traditionally seen their future as. Whereas now they're starting to realise that actually, like in the days of the Nig Fabrication Yard and McDermott Yard at Ardusir, this is coming back and it's growing. So we have, if not every week, every second, we've got visits from businesses wanting to come and based in the Highlands again. And not just from the UK, obviously, but from abroad as well. So some very big companies coming back here and creating employment. And for me, the benefit's going to have to be for the whole of the Highlands, and that's where the employment and where the opportunities will come from. But one thing I would say to the members is, and this is a balance, and I'd always welcome your guidance on this, is about the messaging here, because this isn't all happening tomorrow. These jobs aren't all coming tomorrow. You know, there's already a few hundred jobs that have come in the area, and there'll be hundreds more coming in the next few weeks, next few months. But really, it's over the next 2 or 3 years that the job count will start to increase. So there's a thing about expectation here, about making sure we're ready for what's coming, but not, you know, claiming there's going to be 10,000 jobs, you know, in the next 6 months. It's going to grow gradually over the next 6 months to 2 or 3 years. Is when the main job numbers are going to start to come in. So anything that you can advise me on or can help us with around that messaging is important. And the last thing I would say is around communication with communities. I know I've had representation from, and because I know I should also say I lived in Skye for 8 years, so I know a lot of folks in Skye, and a lot of people saying to us, what does this mean for people in the West, or people in Lochaber, or people in Wick? Is it going to be a real draw of people and employment from that area? Well, certainly when you have facilities like Kishorn and, you know, facilities around that area, there's going to be work that spreads west for sure, and including smaller businesses. And the nature of what we're doing is, and the nature of it is that there'll be a lot of contract work. So I'm hopeful the benefit will be across the wider area, and wherever we can get somebody to use a Highland business, we're pushing for that. And I'm working with the Federation of Small Businesses and other people to make sure smaller businesses understand what's coming and when it's coming as much as we can. So we'll be speaking to the communities more and more. We've had quite a few online seminars that have been open to anybody. And I'm pleased to say that the Council Chief Exec and others joined in that one, and we'll be having more of them so that it's accessible to all people. And we'll keep going the journey, and we'll keep making sure that as much as we can, local businesses benefit from it. So that's kind of the Highlands of where we are. We'll probably, hopefully, get a response from the UK and Scottish Government on the flow business case in the next few weeks, but it'll probably be the next few months that we get ministerial sign off, and we get a memorandum, and there will be a memorandum of understanding with the Highland Council, the Scottish Government, the UK Government, and the Freeport Board around how we all work together on this going forward. So it's a long process, but I think the benefits for the area will be fantastic when they start to flow. And, you know, I would say to the members especially, you know, your support in communicating that this is a longer journey, not a short one, would be much appreciated. So if there's anything in particular you want me to cover off in more detail, Councillor Campbell, do let me know. Otherwise, I'm conscious that you've got a lot on your agenda. Hopefully that's a quick snapshot of where we are. There'll be another community newsletter going out in the next week or two, and I'll make sure that each of you receives it, if not in advance, certainly at the same time as it goes out to the community councils and everybody else. So hopefully that's been helpful.
Thank you, Callum. Thanks for coming to our meeting this morning and explaining your progress on the port. I'm pleased you've been at Kishorn and spoken with Ali Ferguson, because that's of great interest to our ward.
Well, normally he's trying to put a shinty stick. For many years, he was trying to put a shinty stick around my throat. So
we've got that in common as well. I'm president of Kidlowshiel.
Well, absolutely. So no, but it's fantastic to see what Ali's doing there, and some of the work that we're looking at. And I'm sure some of you maybe know this better than me, but some of the size of some of the structures that are being proposed, especially if there's like concrete floating foundations for these offshore wind farms, there's very few places in Europe can handle them, and Kishorn's one of them. So obviously we've been speaking to the quarry over there as well about what could happen. So if at all possible to spread the benefit in the wider area, we will. And the reality is there's nowhere else in Scotland actually can cope with the size and depth of a concrete structure in the same way that Kishorn can. So I'm hopeful there's a future for Kishorn in that overall.
And you're in touch with the Scottish government, are you, or the UK? Is the new UK government as supportive of what you're trying to achieve? Yes, the Labour government.
So far, and obviously it's early days, but so far they have been. They've obviously the top. There's 5 main priorities which the new Prime Minister highlighted. Number one being the economy. Number 2 being the transition to green energy. So we hit both of those. So far the message has been positive. If you like my ultimate boss, if you like the 2 senior people that sign off on what we do in a Scottish context, it's Kate Forbes, who, as you know, understands the Highlands very well, and on the UK side, it'll be Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Angela Rayner understands communities and has a strong view on how we, level up, if you like. I know that levelling up is not the terminology going forward, but how we spread the benefit of the wealth in the UK. And again, I would argue that the Freeport being located in the Highlands was all about making sure that some of this work comes to this region as a whole. So I'm optimistic that they are supportive, but there was and this is a matter for public record, some of the funding that had been put aside for the Freeports and the Southern Enterprise Zones was removed 2 weeks ago during the sort of mini election that you mentioned. So we are interested in how that evolves going forward, because obviously one of the things we need to do up here is invest in the infrastructure to make sure we benefit from that. So we've got some work to do in making sure that the new government understands that this isn't just a Freeport like any other Freeport. This is ultimately we keep, as you know, losing our population in the Highlands. We lost another, 3.7% of our young working age people in the last census. So this is fundamentally about stabilising the Highlands as a whole in population terms. So it really is important socially as well as economically. So that's the message we'll be getting across, and we'll continue to press for.
Which Callum will put housing as top of the list for this to happen.
Absolutely. And one thing the members should be aware of, and I'm very careful. When I was younger, I lived in hydro housing in Strathpeffer.
That's where I am.
Well, you'll know exactly where I am. So yeah. The thing is, in the past, the housing is not the Highland Council will play a huge part in this housing issue going forward, but it's not just up to Highland Council. I think in the same way that we used to have forestry housing, hydro housing, and police housing, we need to look at the new industry to help with a housing solution as well for the area. And I'm also being very careful to not talk about working housing just for workers working in the Green Freeport. The local community has a 9,000 odd housing waiting list in the Inner Firth. This is housing for all workers, because people, as I said in one of the other wards, my sister was a nurse in the area but couldn't get a house anywhere to live, and she left the area. So we need housing to keep all of our workforce, and the majority of our workforce will of course be locals as well. So housing, Councillor Campbell, I would say housing is right up there, probably the top 2 things that really need sorted to make all this work. And it's something we all have to really work on together.
Thank you, Callum. Liz, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you lived in my house. We're up in the old, I think they were built originally for the hydro. No, I just wanted to come back to something you said earlier about getting the message out that this is for the whole of Highland. And I don't know if other members have had it, but I have had a lot of emails with people very unhappy about the principle of what they see as Freeports. And I've really had to kind of dig deep and do my homework and we have to get that message out that this is different. The green port is different. They operate under, slightly different regulations. They are, local authority is the overseeing body. So there's that kind of political aspect. I don't know if other members have had similar emails. I've had quite a lot. And I happen to think that, I think it was Kate Forbes at the time with the previous government. I think she did a really good job negotiating a very specific and unique Freeport, green port. I want to call it a green port to distinguish for Scotland, but that's messaging that I think we have to get out there as well.
If I may respond to that, Councillor Campbell, Chair, you're dead right. That the challenge we have is that Freeports all across the world actually are different shapes and sizes, and even the ones in the UK are different. So some are totally owned and run by local authorities. Others are, if you like, driven by a private business, like Firth Ports has got one in Tameside. Our one is different again, and the criticism that I've had as well, and concerns around the Freeport, quite often is labelling us as if we're exactly the same model as some of the other Freeports. So the business that I am in charge of, there's 3 or 4 staff. We're a not-for-profit business. We have no shareholding, so even if we did have a surplus, that profit can't go anywhere other than into future activity. And one of the things I've been working closely with on council staff is that we've raised funds from the private sector landowners to reduce our reliance on public funding going forward. So it's an entirely different kettle of fish, I would suggest. And what we're doing in our community newsletters is a myth-busting section. So, for example, I've heard people saying, oh, well, there's no health and safety regulations, which is 100% false. I've heard people saying that their employment terms are not protected, which is again is 100% false. In fact, we've got a fair work charter with all the landowners, so there's actually more protection inside the Freeport, Green Freeport area than there is outside the Green Freeport area. So all these things are something we have to work at the messaging though, and I know that you'd, Councillor Craft, you'll be getting that kind of messaging. So we're pushing back as often as we can. We've done little videos and we'll be doing more communication because this has actually been pursued, secured and delivered by people from this area, I would argue, so for the area. So we've just got to keep that messaging going.
Thanks. Chris?
Oh, on mute, sorry.
I managed to unmute myself and mute myself again. Anyway, here we are. Well, thank you very much for that. Like Liz, I've also had quite a number of emails, rather in opposition, on various grounds. Some, as Liz was saying, in principle, and some because they felt this was something that's going to benefit just the Cromarty Firth area, and the rest of the Highlands would be deprived, including the Fort William area and others. I personally think that if we can pull it off, as you were suggesting, it's one of the best things that's happened to the Highlands over decades, and it has tremendous potential. And I've tried to persuade people writing such emails that it should bring benefits to the whole Highland population everywhere. Difficult message to get across, but I believe that's what we have to say, and I believe it's true.
No, I believe it's true as well, and I would give an example. So I've had meetings with Lochalsh Chamber, which I know covers right up into Lochalsh as well now. I think there's the Lochalsh Chamber's name, I think, might have changed, is it? Because I believe Lochalsh Chamber of Commerce covers right up to Kinlochshiel now as well, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm right in that, but so I've spoken with them, and I've even had meetings with elected members from Orkney because they're concerned as well. The scale of what's coming, I have absolutely no doubt will benefit the whole area. The challenge will be to make sure that local businesses, especially smaller businesses and other people, can participate in it as well. And we've got enough warning this is coming this time. I mean, RDC or NIG came pretty fast, and it was quite difficult for the area to cope with that sudden increase in what was happening. So there's a lorry reversing just beside my office here. I'll just let it pass. So So, you know, this is something we can work at benefiting from in a little while. 2 seconds, I'll close the window here, folks. 2 seconds. Sorry, a hullabaloo happening at the window. So it will, but what we have to do in terms of making sure that it benefits the whole area is keep the conversations going. I know that sometimes people think they see things as a threat early on. I know that some of the office and property owners in and around the area have thought, well, everybody's going to go into the Freeport area, and we won't be able to rent out our little factory or lockup. The demand is already through the roof for a lot of these assets, so it's going to spread across the wider area. And the last thing I'll say is that wind farms that are being built offshore will need operations and maintenance for the next 20-30 years, and they're basing themselves in places like Wick and Scrabster. They may well come and service them in places like Kirshorn. This is the benefit is going to be for a lot of the smaller ports is the long-term O&M. So, for example, even in Malig, I know the folks there pretty well, and they do some maritime training. So I was speaking to the folks in Malig and saying, well, is there any way in which we could potentially some of the maritime or offshore training that you do in the community there could actually be offered to some of the people who might be involved in the offshore industry going forward. So if we can spread the benefit into the wider area, then we will.
Thank you, Callum. Thanks. There's no more messages for Callum, so we wish you well in your job and to progress Green Freeport. Thank you.
Thank you much. Morning time. Thank you very much. Cheers now.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Now, members, we've got to approve the minutes from pages 28 to 31. Anybody got any issues with the minutes? No? Oh, well, we'll have put that's the minutes approved.
Yeah, happy to approve. I was just getting my mic on.
Yeah. That's it. So that ends our agenda for today.
Sorry, Chair, could we go back just to item 6 just for the noting, because we jumped from the winter report to the Inverness Freeport. Right, item 6.
Yeah, we'll go back to item. Sorry, I got Callum a message from Callum heading us up that he had to go to another meeting, and I was frightened that we were going to lose him, so we did rush it a bit. Go back to item Westeros office. To item, is it to we approved the service plan? Or this is for the discretionary budget?
It's just for noting the grants. That,
it's just for noting. I knew it was just for noting. Do members approve it?
Yeah, happy to note. Yep.
Yeah. So that ends our meeting today.